Have you ever wondered why you feel irresistibly attracted to people who seem completely different from you? It is not just coincidence, nor pure chemistry. According to Carl Jung, you fall in love with what is missing in you. And the reason behind this might be shaping all your relationships without you even realizing it. What Jung discovered about the psychology of attraction goes far beyond romantic love. It reveals a deep mechanism of the human mind, capable of transforming not only your relationships, but also your perception of yourself. And when you understand this principle, you stop seeking in others what has always been inside you. Today, you will discover why your most intense feelings may actually be reflections of your own lost soul. And the most surprising part, how this can become your greatest key to self-knowledge and personal power. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what comes next may change the way you see all your relationships. Stay until the end, because only there will you understand the true message Carl Jung left about love, the soul, and what is really missing in you. Brian was always a methodical guy. He had a predictable life, a stable career, friends similar to him, and a routine that rarely got out of control. He used to say he liked things in place, silence, order, logic. But everything changed the day he met Scarlett. Scarlett was the opposite in every way. Spontaneous, intense, a whirlwind of emotions. She arrived late, spoke loudly, made inappropriate jokes, danced in the street as if no one was watching. Instead of pulling away, Brian became completely hypnotized. He used to say she was the only person who could make him forget about time. And for some reason, he felt like he needed her, as if something in him was incomplete and only Scarlett could fill it. At first, everything felt like magic, but over time, the differences turned into conflicts. Brian felt exhausted, trying to keep up with her pace. Scarlett, on the other hand, felt suffocated by his rigidity. And what started as overwhelming passion became an emotional storm that neither of them knew how to control. That was when Brian told me something I never forgot. He looked at me and said, "I do not know if I loved Scarlett or if I was trying to find a part of myself I never had the courage to live." That sentence stayed in my mind for weeks, because it was not just about Brian or about Scarlett. It was about me, about you, about all of us. Why do we fall in love precisely with those who are different, with those who challenge us, with those who awaken what we have spent our whole lives trying to hide? What Brian did not know at the time is that he was not just in love with Scarlett. He was in love with his shadow, with the repressed part of his own being. And what seemed like love was actually an inner cry, begging to be whole. How many times have you found yourself in a relationship that felt more like a mirror than a connection? How many times have you felt you needed the other person to feel complete? Maybe it is not love you are looking for. Maybe it is yourself. And this is where Carl Jung comes in. Carl Jung believed that the human psyche is not a simple system. We are made of layers. The persona, which is what we show to the world. The ego, which is what we believe we are. And the shadow, which is everything we deny, repress, or hide from ourselves. The shadow is not necessarily something bad. It is simply what has been banished from consciousness. It can be your vulnerability, your anger, your sensuality, your creativity, or even your courage. As children, we learn what is acceptable and what is not. And everything we were taught to repress, we push into that dark corner of the mind, the shadow. The problem is that what is not integrated does not disappear. It only hides. And sooner or later, it finds a way to come back. Sometimes it returns as emotional outbursts, sometimes as destructive choices, but often it comes back disguised as love. That is why we fall in love with what is missing in us, because the other becomes a living projection of our shadow. And unconsciously, we feel that by connecting with them, we are recovering something we lost. Scarlett was not just a woman different from Brian. She was what he never allowed himself to be: chaotic, free, unfiltered in her passion for life. And while he saw in her something that completed him, he did not realize that it had always been inside him, but was never allowed to exist. This is how passion becomes a portal, an invitation to integrate what is missing. But if you do not understand this mechanism, what begins as fascination can turn into frustration, because you will want the other person to save you from what you do not want to face. The human mind is ingenious. When we cannot heal something, we try to recreate the scene, hoping that this time the ending will be different. So you fall in, love, you give yourself, you project, you idealize. But deep down, you are not looking for the other. You are trying to find the part of yourself that was abandoned. And here lies the most uncomfortable point of this truth. The more repressed your shadow is, the more intense the impact of meeting someone who represents it. You will not just like the person. You will think they are everything you ever wanted. You will feel that you need them. You will call it a soulmate, destiny, spiritual connection. But in reality, you are facing a reflection. Jung said that what most irritates or fascinates us in others is usually exactly what is unresolved within us. And if you are not aware of this, you will live in cycles of emotional repetition, expecting the other to do for you what only your own soul can do. And if you think this is just theory, think about your past relationships. Those people who marked you deeply, were they exactly like you? Or did they show you a part of life you did not know how to live? What if I told you that the real reason you feel incomplete is not because someone is missing, but because you are missing yourself? In the next few minutes, you will understand how ancient traditions and even contemporary experts confirm the same pattern that Jung saw, and more, how this can be used to break an invisible cycle that has been controlling you for years. The idea that we fall in love with what is missing in us did not begin with Carl Jung. This same logic appears, in different forms, in various ancient traditions and in contemporary studies of deep psychology. In ancient Greece, Plato spoke about this in the Symposium, when he told the myth that humans were created as complete beings, with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 faces. But for challenging the gods, they were split in half. And since then, we have spent our lives searching for our other half. The mistake, however, was taking this literally. Because what Jung and other thinkers discovered is that this other half is not out there. It is within you, fragmented, repressed, hidden. The true journey is not to find someone. It is to reintegrate what was lost. In Eastern traditions like Tibetan Buddhism, there is talk of yin and yang as opposing and complementary forces within the human being. The wise person is not the one who eliminates the opposite, but the one who manages to balance both poles within themselves. And according to Master Dzogchen Ponlop Rinpoche, human suffering comes from attachment to fixed identities. Because when you identify with only one part of yourself, everything you reject will seek expression in some way, often through relationships. In modern psychology, Dr. Robert Johnson, a Jungian analyst, wrote an entire book about this. In We, Understanding the Psychology of Romantic Love, he explains how we project our inner archetypes onto the people we love. According to him, Western romanticism created a trap. We expect the other to complete us, when in reality, we are using the other as a screen to project our own soul. These projections are so powerful that they can blind even the most conscious people, because we do not see the other as they really are. We see what we need to see, what is missing, what we secretly wish to be. And while we are not aware of this, we remain trapped in illusion. George, a therapist who specializes in couple dynamics, says that 90% of romantic conflicts come from unrealistic expectations based on unconscious projections. He says that many times, the person you love was never really who you imagined. You just used their presence to activate parts of yourself that were asleep. And that is why so many relationships start intensely and end painfully. Because in the beginning, we are intoxicated by the shadow of the other. We think we found what was missing. But over time, we begin to see the real human being behind the projection. And if we are not prepared to face the truth, the enchantment turns into frustration. But here is the secret that almost no one tells. When you begin to recognize your shadows and integrate them consciously, something magical happens. You stop searching in others for what you need to develop in yourself. And for the first time, you can love without need. You can relate to someone by choice, not out of lack. You can admire without depending. Be with someone out of affinity, not compensation. This is the turning point. This is where love stops being projection and starts becoming real connection. But for that, you need courage to dive into your own shadows, to look at yourself with radical honesty, to admit that maybe much of what you thought was love was just a desperate attempt to find yourself again. And if this feels uncomfortable, it is because it truly is. Self-knowledge is not made of pretty phrases. It requires you to deconstruct everything you thought you knew about yourself. But on the other side of this process, there is a freedom that no one can take from you, the freedom of not needing someone to feel whole. And now comes the most interesting part, because there is a hidden key in this process that almost no one notices. A hidden element that completely transforms the way you attract and maintain relationships. And that is what we will talk about next. There is a hidden pattern behind all your relationships, but most people never notice. This pattern is so subtle that you can spend your entire life repeating the same emotional stories with different people, thinking it is bad luck, fate, or misfortune in love. But the truth is, as long as this pattern is in control, nothing changes. And the key to breaking it lies in a detail that almost no one sees. We are not talking about personality or shared interests. We are talking about something deeper, a silent mechanism that acts from the very first moment you feel attracted to someone. A psychological force that decides, for you, who will enter your life, who will fascinate you, and even who will emotionally destroy you. This mechanism has a name. It is called the field of emotional projection. And the most dangerous thing about it is that it acts before consciousness. You do not rationally choose who you fall in love with. You are pulled, like a magnet, as if a part of you were trying to return home. But not a real home, an emotional home, lost in your childhood, in your traumas, in your emptiness. This field is formed by everything that was rejected in you. Your repressed desires, your denied emotions, your forbidden wishes. And every time you meet someone who represents that, the mind sends a signal, an irrational attraction, and you call it connection. But here is the point that changes everything. That attraction is not a sign that the person is right for you. It is a mirror, a warning, an opportunity. And if you do not know how to interpret that signal, you will repeat the cycle. You will live intense highs and devastating lows. You will confuse intensity with truth. And worse, you will keep searching in others for what needs to be awakened inside yourself. Some schools of thought call this the call of the soul. Others, archetypal reconnection. But all of them point to the same principle. Romantic love is often just the packaging of a much deeper process. A process of healing, of rediscovery, of inner transformation. The question no one asks is, what exactly am I trying to rediscover every time I fall in love? What is missing in me that makes the other feel so necessary? What part of me did I abandon that now insists on appearing in someone else's eyes? This investigation is the turning point. And only those who face this journey can escape the cycle of emotional repetition. Only those who understand this process can experience a new kind of love. A more conscious love. A lighter one. A truer one. But there is a hidden obstacle, an invisible psychological factor that sabotages this process right at the start. It acts like a trap, blocking the integration of your shadows and keeping you stuck in the illusion of emotional neediness. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about now. When you start to see your relationships as mirrors of your own psyche, everything changes. Suddenly, past heartbreaks begin to make sense. Those breakups that once felt like tragedies reveal themselves as disguised lessons. The people who hurt you stop being villains. They become messengers, indicators of what still needs healing within you. This is the first transformation, emotional healing, because you stop carrying the blame for your romantic failures, and you begin to see that every choice, every attraction, every reckless passion was part of a greater script, a script written by your unconscious, asking you to look within. When Brian realized this, he changed. Not overnight, but he began to ask questions he had never allowed himself to ask before. Why did he always seek women so different from him? Why did he feel so drawn to what threw him off balance? Why, deep down, couldn't he relax in stable relationships? Over time, Brian understood that Scarlett wasn't a mistake. She was a teacher. She came to show him the freedom he had denied himself, the lightness, the impulse, the spontaneity he had locked away in childhood while trying to be the perfect son, the rational man, the exemplary professional. Scarlett simply activated that, brought it to the surface, and because of that, he was never the same again. This is the second transformation, shadow integration, because instead of continuing to repress parts of yourself, you start to give them space. Instead of living trapped in extremes, you find balance. And most importantly, you become whole. And a whole person does not fall in love out of need. They love from a place of abundance. The benefits don't stop there. When you master this internal process, your self-esteem rises, because you no longer need external validation to feel worthy. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. Stop begging for attention. Stop chasing those who don't want to stay. You become the center of your own emotional system, and that directly affects how you relate to the world. At work, you stop seeking approval and start delivering value. In friendships, you choose quality over quantity. In decisions, you listen to your intuition, not your trauma. And in love, you stop trying to be desired and start consciously choosing with whom you want to share your energy. Lori, one of George's students, once said that after she began integrating her shadow, she discovered a new kind of love. A love that doesn't suffocate, that doesn't demand, that doesn't dramatize. But that also isn't dull. It is deep, yet calm. Intense, yet steady. Passionate, but not dependent. And this kind of love is only possible when you find yourself before trying to find someone else. When you accept that your lost half is not in another person. It's in your unlived side, in your silenced desire, in your light that was dimmed by life. This is the third and greatest transformation, emotional freedom. Because from this point on, you no longer need anyone to feel complete. And it is exactly when you no longer need that you are finally ready to truly love. But here is the final detail. There is a stage in this process that few people reach. It is a point where your awareness expands so much that you not only integrate your shadow, you transform your pain into power. And at that stage, something mysterious happens, a phenomenon that Carl Jung mentioned but never fully explained, something that forever changes the way you attract people into your life, and that is what we will reveal in the final part of this journey. Jung called this phenomenon individuation, the moment when a human being stops searching outside for what has always been inside, and finally reconciles with everything that was once split, denied, or cast aside. The process is not easy, but those who go through it never love the same way again. Because at this stage, your energy changes, and something strange begins to happen. You no longer have to chase. The right people start to show up, as if your soul had finally lit a clear signal, as if the universe responded to your inner balance, by bringing people who vibrate at the same frequency. But Jung gave a warning. There is one final trap, one last test that many fail. It shows up right when you think you've figured it all out. A subtle illusion disguised as enlightenment. One that can undo everything you've worked so hard to transform. And it's about this final trap that we'll talk about in the next episode. If any part of this made sense to you, if something in this story touched you, now it's your turn. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Leave a like to help this message reach those who need it most. And share it with someone who's stuck repeating the same emotional patterns and still doesn't understand why. You didn't get here by accident. You're on the path. And the next step starts now.